I'll let you know when it's live, Corey. We're good.
The Founding Mothers Movement is calling on all women to strike on March 8th, International Women's Day. For over 100 years, women have been striking for their rights. And why do we need to continue this tradition? Because women are still under assault by authoritarians, dictators, oligarchs, and Project 2025. Our top 10 list of creative direct action ideas can be found at the foundingmothers.world website, and here are just a few of them. Sign the Founding Mothers petition for partnership and peace. Host a teach-in. Help others learn about the connection between women and war. Hold a children's read-in. Host an interfaith event and celebrate sisterhood. And take a labor break. Don't work, clean, or cook except for children. And don't have sex. Instead, watch the film She-Rock, Spike Lee's remake of Lysistrata, the ancient Greek play, where women withheld sex until men put down their arms. And what are our demands for this strike? The solutions contained in the Founding Mothers Proclamation. Voting rights for all women. Educational access for girls, bodily autonomy and reproductive freedom, prohibitions against child marriage, and in some, universal gender equity. This International Women's Day helped commemorate the successful women's strikes of yesteryear. On March 8th in 1857, female textile workers protested the sweatshops in New York City. In March of 1913, women in the United States held their first suffrage march in Washington, D.C. In more recent years, the 1961 Women's Strike for Peace led to a nuclear test ban treaty. In 1975, Icelandic women's strike for equal pay shut down the country. Then in 1977, the United Nations officially established March 8th as International Women's Day. And have you heard of the Geneva Consensus Declaration? This dangerous declaration pretends to promote women's health, but in reality, it's part of a global expansion of Project 2025. That's why we need you to sign our online petition at avaz.org. The petition asks you to support the Founding Mothers Proclamation and reject the Geneva Consensus Declaration. So join us on International Women's Day. We are 4 billion sisters strong, and we have the power to transform the world.
Hi, welcome to our monthly Connect Fest. My name is Diane Blay, and I'm a member of the Founding Mothers Peace Room, our executive team. March is Women's History Month, a month of celebration that includes International Women's Day. We hoped you enjoyed watching the video we made for this special occasion. At today's Connect Fest, we wish to continue the celebration by honoring all the women who have worked to anchor our civil rights, bodily rights, and economic rights. We also wish to highlight and honor one amazing woman, Kasturba Gandhi, who worked alongside her more famous husband her entire life. Now, Christy Michaels, one of our delegates from the Global Women's Congress, will introduce our guest speaker.
Thank you so much. I am so happy to have this opportunity to introduce Cynthia Lucas. Today, we have a speaker who has spent decades researching the life of Kasturba Gandhi. This is Gandhi's wife. Cynthia Lucas is an award-winning author and documentarian whose work both educates and inspires. Cynthia began her career as a writer, journalist, and college educator. She also served as a two-term city councilwoman in Scottsdale, Arizona. In 2004, she began collaborating with Kelly Kearns and founded a nonprofit educational media organization called Heaven on Earth Creations. In 2019, Cynthia created the nonprofit Sweet Springs Productions to expand the scope of her work to include stories about women activists, which have rarely, if at all, been told. Since then, she has written, filmed, and produced 6 acclaimed documentaries about global oneness and nonviolence, including 2 PBS films on Mahatma Gandhi and the first PBS feature on his wife entitled Kasturba Gandhi, Accidental Activist. Currently, Cynthia is at work on part 2 of this biographical series entitled Kasturba Gandhi, Compassionate Activist. As we will learn, Kasturba has much more than a helpmate to Gandhi, was much more than a helpmate to Gandhi. She was an equal partner with him during the Free India movement. We are thrilled to have Cynthia with us today, plus a couple of clips from her documentary. Cynthia, thank you for being with us today. I am so excited to see you and have a chance to talk with you more.
Well, thank you very much, Christy, and thank you, Laura and Diane and Karuna and Corey and all involved in this program. I am very, very blessed to have been asked to speak to your organization because it's going to allow me the opportunity to learn more about your work and to connect. And I'm sure we are going to connect in the future because we're on the same wavelength, clearly. Just watching your video, I can tell that, but I've also looked at your website and wonderful work being done for many years, grassroots work, which I believe all politics is grassroots. And that's speaking as a former politician. As Gandhi said, politics is like wrestling with a snake, but somebody has to do it. So anyway, I did my stint. But I'd like to start today with this brief clip or trailer from the current film on Kasturba Gandhi that I'm working on called Kasturba Gandhi, Compassionate Activist, because it introduces the theme of compassion, which I'd like to speak about to begin with. So Corey, if we could have that trailer. That is part 1, and it's an amazing story. There's more to her story. This is a story about a woman that history missed.
While Gandhi has been admired, extolled, and praised as the man of the millennium, Kasturba has been forgotten.
The sad thing is that we haven't paid attention to her, and even though she was the anchoring force.
He said that several times in his life, that he could not have been what he became but for Kasturba.
She was a powerful person.
She becomes a full partner with Gandhi. It's not Gandhi's work anymore, it's their work.
The British said Mrs. Gandhi is going around instigating the people.
She is considered dangerous because she is affecting Indian society from the inside.
She had an amazing influence on the people at large.
She is a fighter and courageous woman, and she does that for the last breath.
She was a big influence on his learning that compassion is another form of power, because he had a companion who had another form of power.
It's not just simple compassion, it takes a deep compassion. You have the suffering of the other as your own.
She became one of the first women activists in modern history, a major figure of activism.
Women's participation in revolutionary movements has been a very unappreciated factor driving not just revolutionary outcomes, but also the sheer spread of democratization around the world.
What Kasturba's story has to tell women today, that this other form of power is what's called for. This times of hate, the kind of perseverance she showed, is what all human beings need to cultivate.
We have a propensity to be compassionate. This is actually the nature of our minds and our hearts.
Rise up, all you warriors of love.
Rise up, all you warriors of love. I love that. And I used it in the first film too, that song by Lila June, because it's so invigorating and inspiring. Rise up, all you warriors of love. I wanted to start with that trailer, even though it's about the second film, not the first, just because Dr. Vandana Shiva talking about compassion as power. And that's, I think a very important thing for us to think about and know and embody the power of compassion. In fact, that's the power that Kasturba taught Gandhi about. And I'm going to talk a little bit more in depth about how she did that later. But it was compassion that he was lacking when he started his own political journey. And she was able to teach that to him. And of course, that's the bedrock of nonviolence and nonviolent communication, nonviolent action, activism. It's a compassion, because it's a compassion for those you oppose, understanding, as the Gandhis might say, that the Lord is enshrined in the hearts of all. The Lord is the supreme reality. That's a quote from the Ishayi Upanishads. And so it's understanding that somebody who you might have in the past called an enemy, somebody you're opposing and resisting, that you still retain compassion, or if you want to use the word love, for them when you're, taking your nonviolent action or communication. And she taught him that. And he said that. My wife became my guru. She taught me the lesson of nonviolence. And he had to learn it one-on-one when he was dominating her in the Indian patriarchy in the late 19th century, early 20th, when they were first married. So I bring up the power of compassion for that purpose, for us to see the connection very strongly to the whole nonviolent method that the Gandhis pioneered and were so successful in the freedom movement, as well as in the social movements that they felt were equally as important. They said if India gets free and doesn't initiate all these social, movements that we've started, such as equality for all the castes and equality for women and so on, then it's not true freedom. So that's why Gandhi felt he failed at the end of his life, because India did not go completely in the direction that he wanted to, despite the fact that they got freedom. But back to compassion. I've interviewed a neuroscientist about compassion. You may have seen him in this trailer. He wrote The Neuroscience of Compassion. And I asked him, is there a connection between compassion and fearlessness? Because Kasturba was both of these, extremely compassionate, but also fearless. And she was known in her speeches as saying, don't be afraid of government servants. That's the way she put it. Don't be afraid of government servants. So she was very fearless and unafraid to stand up to anybody in authority, including her husband, as she did when they were first married. So I asked him, is there a connection between compassion and fearlessness? And he looked at me and he said, absolutely, absolutely. Because if you are afraid, your whole aperture of your awareness is narrowed and closes down. So you're not even able to see anybody else in suffering, much less to feel compassionate for anybody else. You're so involved in yourself, and you're jumping back to the reptilian brain that we have, in the back of our minds, that we're, afraid of the other, not realizing in our better minds and brains that we are all connected. And so this connection is something, this compassion is something that Kasturba had at the same time that she had this great fearlessness, absolutely unafraid. That was the adjective most people talked about and used when they talked about her. And I have this wonderful commentator, Dr. Who's in this film, who interviewed 500 people, Dr. Sita Kapadia, 500 people, and this was the adjective they most often used about her. Some also used serene, but the one most often used was fearless. So she had that spiritual serenity at the same time she was able to be fearless and to stand up and speak truth to power when needed. Very compassionate woman of mother of 4, loving wife. At the same time, this fearless aspect, which is why I show the tiger in that trailer, because that female tiger, because she really did have that. I was asked to talk about a few times Kasturba was fearless. And, I think that initial time that she was just married, she was married at 13, Gandhi was 12. And when she stood, yes, I know, it's child marriage, and that was mentioned in your video, I noted. And it still goes on, but they ended up at the end of their lives, speaking out against it. But anyway, when she was first married, here she is in patriarchal India, in getting married in 1881, and she stands up to Gandhi when this husband, who later says he was playing the husband, he realizes what a fool he was and how wrong he was, but he told her she couldn't go outside the house without asking him. And that was not very uncommon at that time in India. And women, when they did go out, were veiled. Not just the Muslim women, which we're very aware of, but also the Hindu women would be veiled. And he said, you can't go outside without asking me. And she said, what do you mean? I only go to visit friends or to go to the temple with your mother. You mean I have to ask you about that? And he said, yes. And she said, no, I will not do that. I've done nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong in it. And so he said, I'm sending you back to your parents. Now, that to us, we might say, great, she's getting away from him. But in that context, that cultural context, that was terrible. That was a terrible thing to happen to her. But she stood up to it and she said, okay, I'll go back because I'm not going to give in. And she did, and she waited him out. And he contacted her and said, when are you coming back? And she said, I'm not until, you don't demand that I ask you every time I go outside the house. Again, revolutionary at that time, and on the personal level. And he said, okay, you can come back on your own terms. And he later said that was the greatest lesson he ever got in nonviolent communication. Because again, when she stood up to him, she did it with love and compassion, but strength and fearlessness. She was willing to take the consequences of her action, of standing up and speaking truth to power. Now, that sounds like a minor event in a way, but not to Gandhi and not to her. And she lived her life that way. in her 40s, she moved to South Africa for one thing. She didn't have to do that, but that was a big deal then to make that kind of journey. And they were there, and in her 40s, she leads, she finds out that the Supreme Court has made a ruling that Indian marriages and Muslim marriages there are invalid. Only Christian marriages will be, honored. And she's shocked, and she says, I can't believe this. That makes my children illegitimate. It makes me illegitimate. I'm not married. Um, and she asked Gandhi, who had already started his activism, and was a lawyer there in South Africa. That's why they were there. And she, asks him, can women go to jail? I mean, this is, how naive she was at that time about politics. And he said, of course. And so she said, okay, then I will go to prison. And so she leads a group of women and some men in the group as well. It's a partnership all the time with them. And she leads them to break the law and go to prison. And if we get a chance to show this other little clip, we'll see what the prison cell looked like. And I've been there filming it. Ladies, you did not want to be there in 1913, just like those suffragettes, particularly those in Britain had to go to prison a lot and really treated brutally. Um, so she did that, or that was in her 40s. Then when she came back to India, she got involved not only in her political mission, and then she got involved in the social mission, which really lit her up, going out to the villages and helping the needy women and men, the farmers, their children, helping them in whatever way she could. She taught them what little English she knew at that point. She taught them how to spin. Gandhi and she started this major movement to boycott English cloth by spinning their own clothing. And, she would do that, go to village, just unafraid, walking up to somebody's door and talking to them. And Gandhi believed in that too, the real grassroots kind of politics that you build from the bottom up. And, she was teaching these children and women and the British and the Indians too, who didn't like her upsetting the status quo, burned down her hut that she was teaching in. And she said, we're not going to give in. I'm going to keep teaching. We'll put up a shed, we'll do whatever we have to. So this is the kind of person she was. Not the person that you may often read about in blurbs or little Wikipedia moments or whatever about the dutiful wife. And I've even seen a video that says, from back then, that says she did nothing politically, but only, waited upon her husband. Couldn't have been more wrong. And that's the kind of thing that is put out there because of women just being underappreciated, undervalued, for their roles in these major revolutions. I mean, the India freedom movement was the largest freedom movement in the world ever. I mean, it's the largest democracy. And she was the one who was in the grassroots, recruiting all the women that made Gandhi's movements possible and successful. So I've just got a few more minutes, and I want to talk about the cutting edge research that my films bring forward. I may not have time for that last video. It's not important. The research that I'm bringing forward in these films, when I connect Kasturba to women today, is extremely important to get out there, to get out to people. And this is this research that says, for one thing, nonviolent campaigns are much more successful than violent ones. For another one, women are almost always in nonviolent campaigns, and those are the only ones they're leaders in. But here's the real important kernel of fact is that when women are involved and they are on the front lines, the nonviolent movements are much more successful. At least 25% as much, if not more, successful than when they're not. Now, why? You might say, well, because women are bringing half of the population into the movement. It's actually more than that. When women get involved, it's not just 2 times as many people they bring in, but 7.5 times as many people. Women have these amazing horizontal networks. We know people. We know friends. We keep in touch with our relatives. We bring everybody in. So there's the numbers that women bring into movements, and so they should be valued, but also they bring discipline. Women are much more likely to keep the non-violent discipline that is needed for a successful campaign. And that's why King's movement and Gandhi's trained people in nonviolence. Well, women are more likely to be nonviolent. And he used to say we embodied nonviolence. But anyway, so we're able to hold nonviolence, in the face of violence. You've seen these pictures of women putting roses in gun barrels, on the front lines. Yes, that's the kind of thing women can do, unafraid. And the research shows that women have a greater impact on security forces than men do. That security forces are more likely to back down and even to take themselves out, maybe even quit their jobs in the security forces because they have seen their mother out there or their sister or their cousin or, a woman they know. They have an impact. Women have an impact on security forces. So there are a lot of reasons why women are important to nonviolent movements, but I want to say probably the most important is the world is out of balance. We all know it. You showed pictures of it in your films, the strong authoritarian men arising, but you also see at the same time this kind of movement. And this has been going on since Kasturba and before, that women are moving slowly to the forefront. And in fact, I have one commentator that I just interviewed, and a young Indian woman, Indian American in DC working on peace and security issues. And she says, this is the golden age of feminism. Yes, there's a backlash. There's a huge backlash. There's all kinds of things happening to take women's rights away. But guess what? We are going to step up, and we are stepping up to bring the balance back. I mean, if we had a yin-yang meter, it would be way over to the yang side, and women are going to pull that back to get some balance. And that is not to say we're going to be women dictators. We all know that. But we're going to be in partnership, and we're going to bring balance to the world. And that's what we're all here to do. Men and women too. Men too. Oh, yes. So I think I'll end on that note. The yin yang meter, if anybody wants. I just made that up, thought it would be funny. But it is a matter of balance, and the world is way out. I mean, not just the authoritarian men, but the disregard for Mother Earth. What can I say? It's way too far out of balance, and we are here to help bring things back into balance. So I will end on that, and thank you everyone for listening.
Do you want us to play your second clip?
Well, if we have time, sure. I didn't want to go over my 20 minutes.
Oh, that's okay. Let's show the second clip, Corey.
At barely 7, Kasturba was formally betrothed to Mohandas, called Mohan as a boy.
She was married at the age of 13, and Gandhiji at that time was only 12 years old.
Shortly after they got married, he was trying to light a lamp in the room, and he laughed at him. Why do you want the lamp? And he said, oh, I'm afraid of the dark. And he also said, I'm afraid of robbers and of ghosts and of snakes. Yeah, she said, I'm not afraid of any of these things.
She was fearless, absolutely fearless.
A lot of people gave the impression that she was just a docile housewife, just followed grandfather wherever he went.
She was a powerful person. There was a ruling by a Supreme Court judge that Indian marriages were not recognized.
We asked Gandhiji, can women go to prison? Gandhiji said, of course. She said,
well, then I shall go to prison.
She's the first woman to show up to resist.
Gandhi became known for recruiting women into his campaigns, a trailblazing tactic. But before he could broaden his view to fully embrace women's power, the primary lessons had to be given and fearless steps taken by Kasturba.
How do you deal with the violent power of violent minds and violent instruments? Only through a higher consciousness. That's what women are bringing. It is the non-violent power in creative form, which is able to resist on the one hand and create alternatives on the other hand.
I've been doing research on the extent of women's participation in particular, and we found that basically the higher the degree or extent of women's participation, the more likely the movements are to succeed.
Kasturba could never have guessed that countless women would follow in her footsteps, many never knowing it, when courage and compassion like hers are in urgent need.
Rise up, all you warriors of love.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Cynthia, for making that documentary, for being with us today. It's truly an honor. And because it's Women's History Month, the timing couldn't be better. My name is Laura George, and I am one of the women in the Founding Mothers Peace Room. And we do wish to thank Cynthia for both this powerful documentary and her entire body of work. Truly, women have a long and storied history in activism, and we are standing on the shoulders of giants at the Founding Mothers movement. In fact, our white paper and original slide deck included a debrief on the original International Congress of Women, which met for the first time in 1878 in Paris. Back then, the women organized a powerful tri-party coalition. It was comprised of women's groups, peace groups, and churches. Founding Mothers has reimagined and reignited the Global Women's Congress, and we've added a fourth category of partnership to the coalition, environmental and indigenous groups. Currently, we have over 120 partners in our coalition, each of which is eligible to send a delegate to Congress. Our 21st Century Women's Congress is the body that maps and manages the movement. Female representatives from our partners come to the Congress on the first Saturday of the month to strategize and implement direct action campaigns that move the movement forward. Then the delegates report back to their organizations, and in this way, information flows into and out of the Women's Congress. We held our inaugural session in July of last year. To date, we've held 9 sessions of the Women's Congress, and our 10th session will be Saturday, April 5th. Now, to build the mother of all movements, we need to organize a meta-unity coalition of nonprofits and world citizens who share our progressive values. And we want to underscore that men are invited to the Founding Mothers movement as well. And some of them are even leading our operational circles. These functional circles meet weekly, and they include a media, tech, a partner, campaigns, and proclamation circle. At our 3rd Congress, we passed the Founding Mothers Proclamation. This is a document that succinctly sets forth our demands for women's rights and the cessation of war. On New Year's Day, we launched the weekly worldwide Wake Up. Civil rights icon John Lewis famously said to make good trouble, well, we're making good noise every Wednesday at high noon in every time zone, and we hope you will join us. On International Women's Day, we made the video that you watched at the beginning, and we launched a second campaign called Founding Mothers Rising. We also have prepared a petition, and I'm going to put the link in the chat, and we're asking you to please go read and sign it. It's at aves.org. Our next campaign will be a week-long direct action. It's going to start on May 12th. That's the day after Mother's Day in the US and around the world. That's the most popular Mother's Day. And it's called the Red Tent Ceremony and Strike. So stay tuned for details. And now we want to hear from you. Please share your thoughts on direct actions, or you can direct a question to Cynthia. Let's begin. There we go. Rebecca's got her hand up. Go ahead, Rebecca.
Thank you so much. Cynthia, I am so inspired by that. I didn't know Kasturba's name even. And even though I'd heard of Gandhi's movements, I'm so inspired by her courage and freedom. And I wonder if you have found out in your studies and research about her vegetarianism, because I'm thinking of that as a way to move forward in the women's movement. There's the violence against animals is so abominable, like it is with women. And I wonder if that might be an action that we could do. And I would love to hear more about you and your understanding of her cultural vegetarianism, but if you know any more. Thank you.
Sure. Well, I know a good deal about it, actually. She was a vegetarian, a very determined and dedicated one. She actually, at one point in her life, she suffered from a lot of bleeding and different problems after her 4 child births. And anyway, at one point, there was a doctor who said, told Gandhi, this looks like it could be the end, when she was suffering from a lot of bleeding. And remember, back then too, so they didn't have as many things that they could save people with medical tools and instruments. Anyway, the doctor said, you really can't survive unless you eat meat. I mean, and that was something that they believed in, that doctor believed, and he was saying it in good conscience, but he said, you've really got to have some meat to have that iron and strength. And she refused. She absolutely refused. And Gandhi actually tried to talk her into it. Um, he usually did not break any of his vows, and she helped him once kind of do it. And here he was with her because he didn't want to lose her. And he said, you know what? I think in a medical situation like this, you could take some meat, because your doctor's suggesting it. And she absolutely refused. And she said, I don't want that doctor anymore. Take me home. And they ended up carrying her, back to the ashram. Very staunch vegetarian. Um, um, and I myself am too, so I understand where you're coming from. So yes, it is something she absolutely believed in, and I think it does run through the Hindu philosophy and spirituality that animals are also respected. I mean, they have Ganesha and a lot of animal gods, and the animals are respected. And for that reason, by the way, I have in both films, and I'm intending to do a third one if I can get the funding to finish the second one and go to the third one, of the end of her life. I put animals in those films as important characters. They're contextual, but more than that, they're meaningful, they're symbols. And what I'm trying to do is make that known, that they believed animals should all be respected. And so, yes, she was very much an animal lover and advocate. So I wish you well with your campaign, or whatever it is that you decide that you'll do on that.
Thank you so much.
Go ahead, Christy.
Hi, thank you. Well, I'm just I've been blown away since I found out about your work, and I'm very grateful um, that you are continuing on, and I'll do my part to help spread the word so that you can raise the funds needed, because it was so shocking to me that there was this whole dynamic, especially how active she was and how powerful she was of an influence. And I was curious because I'm trying to remember in her childhood what formulated this fearlessness about her. I mean, she had, remember something about the first film saying that she had two other babies before her that didn't make it, and those were girl babies. And were they suffocated or were they actually
No, that was due to illness.
oh, due to illness?
And so actually, even though in India at that time sometimes women, girl babies wouldn't be cherished, but in her situation, it just so happened that they'd lost their first two children, and so when she came along, I guess they didn't care that she was a girl baby, that they embraced her and were so happy. They were also, I must say, upper middle class. Now, it's not what we think of as upper middle class here in the U.S. I mean, that would be a lot more, but they were uh, well-to-do compared to the average Indian. And I only say that because, sometimes girls who grow up with uh, means do have more confidence and fearlessness. And sometimes that can be in a bad way, but she in a good way. So I think that her birth order, and then also that the fact that she grew up not having to worry about where the next meal was coming from, with her parents loving her so much. And then I have to say, she must have just come out of the womb that way too.
Yeah.
Because to the extent that she was really, but looking for cultural things, I would point to those other two. But see, we don't know that much about her early life. That was the challenge of making that first film, because we just don't know that much about her. They didn't keep track of her history the way they have done about Gandhi. I mean, we know every single thing he did, when he was young, and then, of course, when he got older. I mean, there have been so many books written about him. And I'm happy to say that my film is the first feature about her, but it's also kind of sad in a way because of, as you say, the amount, of participation that she had in that movement. She's called the mother of India, but it's only seen as kind of a benign, wifely type of thing. It's not seen as she did all of these very fearless things
Right. And
alongside a lot.
Her partnership, that was what was so extraordinary, because she modeled partnership.
Well, it is. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Absolutely.
No.
Absolutely. And that's one thing too that I emphasize in the second film that I'm making is because they get into the ashrams and they start the social work as well as the political, and it is a partnership all the way. You know, um, they go into the villages. He speaks in some of them. She goes to others. He does this, she does that. Sometimes they're together working alongside in a village. Sometimes they're apart, but it's always working in partnership, so that they get the job done. Very disciplined, extremely disciplined, their lives in the ashram. And Gandhi, saw the ashrams as training grounds, almost like boot camps, for the nonviolent movement. And it wasn't just about freedom, it was about these social issues too. He said those were just as important, and she definitely thought they were just as important. In fact, you do the social work to prepare you for the political work. The social work gives you the humility, the respect, the compassion, everything you need to go into the political arena. If you don't have one, you're not going to have the strength to do the other. So they're very much, two prongs. And Gandhi's often just thought about in terms of the nonviolent freedom movement. But no, there was this other aspect, that he didn't achieve for India, but he wanted to, and so did she. I mean, that really lit her fire, is the social, work out helping the needy people, you know. So yeah, did that answer your question?
Yes, yes, thank you. That's great.
Karuna, you have a question?
I
Are you
do.
there?
Thank you. Yes, of course. I have a question for Cynthia. Thank you, Cynthia, for all you're doing and giving and teaching. The power of compassion and the higher consciousness you spoke about in your film. I wanted to ask about the Upanishads. You mentioned something about the Lord is for all, and I'm finding that many people feel in denial to approach this in a compassionate way, the way we're living our world right now, somebody opposing and resisting. Can you give us any tools that might help us still remain compassionate in these most detrimental times of war, and possibly speak about the Upanishad epoch a little bit, the epoch?
Sure. Well,
Thank you.
Gandhi actually said that those opening lines from the Ishayi Upanishad summarized, if you will, the whole Hindu philosophy. And I'll mention the third line though, because that was important to him. The
Thank
Lord
you.
is enshrined in the hearts of all. The Lord is the supreme reality. Rejoice in him, I'll add her, in renunciation. So that was very important to him because he felt like, fasting and, all of that, um, the more you give up, and becoming, Kasturba and all of them in the ashrams took these vows of poverty and, you know, um, celibacy, well, not the ones who were married, but the new young people, and all kinds of vows. And the idea was that the more you give up, the more you'll have to give, and the closer you'll get to God, the Lord, the universe. And you know, they had this great spiritual foundation. And I'll speak about her. Every morning, in the ashram, they would start with interfaith prayers. And they respected all paths to God and the universe. And um, so, you know, I go back to that. That was their foundation.
Right.
To me, it is my foundation. That is not to say these times are not extremely challenging in terms of those of us who are, empathetic and compassionate and seeing what's going on. And but you know, I think just trying as much as we can to be in prayer and meditation, to give up our own egos, and with that, the fear that might be at the bottom of our consternation and anger and confusion. It, you know, it's, I've heard recently one spiritual teacher say, pray in the morning, then do the work in the afternoon. It really opens up something I've been doing, actually, not just in total prayer, but meditation is very important to me every day. And, reading, reflection, but keeping grounded in our spiritual connection, whatever it is. I'm not proselytizing,
Yes.
any connection here.
Yes.
I'm just talking about theirs, but their ability to rise above, and as I said earlier, rise above the ego, rise above the fear, and see the other as someone, a brother or a sister they're very connected to, um, mm, maybe even related to in a past life, we don't know, but not as an opponent, not as an enemy. They are on their own journey, uh, you know, and we we have the power to stand up and be as they were, fearless. We do with prayer and meditation, making that connection. To me, meditation is my lifeline, and for you, it's yoga, I'm sure, and I also do Tai Chi, but, it's Qigong. And, it makes everything possible. Everything flows from that. It may not happen while I'm in meditation, but,
Right.
day. We all know this.
Right.
But I know that's probably not anything new, but it's what I believe they did. Gandhi even took 1 day a week in silence. He felt that forced him to go internally more often.
Yes.
So there are spiritual tricks or
Yes.
techniques,
Yes.
but to me, it all comes down to a spiritual level.
Yes.
It all comes down to a spiritual, energetic level. And with the world out of balance, we've got to just try to get back to, our own spiritual connection in our own part of the world. And as you're doing, reaching out to other parts of the world. Now is the time to connect, but we've got to have that personal connection first, with the greater universe, and knowing that the Lord is enshrined in the hearts of all, even the dictators. And let me just read this quote of Gandhi's, because I wrote it down, thinking I might want to say it today.
Thank you.
Do I have time to do that?
Go
Yes,
ahead.
yes, please.
Whenever I despair, I remember that all through history, the ways of truth and love have always won. There have been tyrants and murderers, and for a time they seem invincible, but in the end, they always fall. Think of it, always.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much for this. Thank you, Cynthia, and bless you, and thank you for coming. Thank you.
I think we have time for another question. Melanie?
Wonderful. Gosh. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Um, wow. I'm thinking back to my childhood when I was looking at a film that we're being taught in grade school. And the thought that ran in my mind was, wow, women didn't do anything. And it's so interesting to, go through history. And so many powerful women, so many things happened, so many things really happened, and the facts are gone. I mean, where did it go? Where did she go? Why don't we know more about her? It's just the work you're doing is so important. And if nobody cared what gender the president of whatever country is, if that's just, oh yeah, whatever, oh yeah, it's a woman, oh yeah, I don't remember, oh yeah, maybe it was a woman, we'd be so much better off. We'd be so connected. We're all humans, we're all world citizens, we don't, so in the story, her story, and of course Gandhi's story, there's this she was fearless, as you said, and she was a dynamo. She was a speaker. She could rally the people. She could get people, women involved. Do you have any tips or suggestions? Because people get so siloed and they're like, oh, I have the way to fix this. I have the way to get us back into balance. And we all kind of have this same vision at the end where it's a partnership society. Do you have any tips for people who are different, have a different way of doing things, but, just to gather together? And like, if you have a dynamic leader, people are like, oh, like Bernie Sanders, people are gathering with him. Oh, yes, well, AOC, people like that. What are your thoughts about getting people to follow or gather or group with the same mission, but in different ways? Do you have any tips for people to come together?
Well, yeah, that is the challenge of our time, because we're a global society, and in some ways, as Barbara Marx Hubbard predicted, we're all connected more, but in other ways, not as much. And many of us do feel isolated in our own, little projects. And I have, me too sometimes, I'm working in isolation as a filmmaker. But one one thing I did want to mention before I forgot is the Rion Eisler movement of partnership. It's been mentioned, partnership, and I did want to mention that because I heard her speak recently, and she and I have connected, and it's something I just like people still to know about that
She's
her
part
movement.
of she's part of our movement.
Well,
She's part of the
of course.
founding
I
mothers.
probably can't give you any tips then, but anyway, in terms of reaching out, well, I think as far as Kasturba and Gandhi did anyway, it was always about grassroots. It was always about going and meeting someone face to face. Now, maybe they would be using technology now like this. I'm not sure because Gandhi was not all that sold on technology, but but anyway, it is a one-on-one prospect, I think. And yes, there are dynamic leaders out there, and we can name them, and they've got their own followings. But the challenge is, as you say, how to get these people to connect to each other. And I think that the only way is personal, you know, going to them. And what I've been doing recently is just introducing myself to certain people and saying, I'd like you to know about my work, tell me about yours. I mean, it's a very simple thing, but it grows. It grows. And when I was in politics, I knocked on doors, and I mean, that was not done by many when I was doing it, but still, when it's done, as the Gandhis did, just they didn't knock on the doors, they just walked in. They didn't, but a lot of times there weren't doors. But anyway, it was about face to face connecting with someone so that someone can feel this energy that you're producing, with your heart and feel that. And that's the whole basis of nonviolence and nonviolent communication, nonviolent action, is that when you are, face to face with someone and they can feel your heart energy, their own heart and hatred or violence will melt. I mean, that's the word that Gandhi used, melt. And so we have to be in connection with someone so that they do understand, at least on a heart level, our intentions and are pure, and that we are accepting them in that compassionate way, and understand that the Lord is enshrined in the hearts of all. And people can feel that. You might say something differently, but if they don't feel it, I guess I'm just a big one in promoting one-on-one meetings with people to talk to them about this issue, and can we connect with you? Would you like to connect? Either an organization leader or just a person one-on-one. I don't know. Does that help? Because it's a challenge nowadays.
Yeah, it does help.
We are so grateful, Cynthia. It sounded like she started at 13. She must have had a download somewhere to stand on her 2 feet and say, no, I have to go to work. And if I have to go back to my parents to get you to allow me, then I'm just so grateful to her and to her work. And so I bow with the divine feminine and I say to all of you, we hope that you enjoyed this Women's Month Connect Fest. This is so important for you to sign up and to become a part of the women's movement. We have this Founding Mothers movement. You have a choice. You can do World Citizen, you can come in as a partner group, and as a delegate as well in the Women's Congress. Our Global Women's Congress was designed to provide decentralized agency and maximum flexibility to our partners, while also providing centralized collaboration and the cohesion required to monitor the movement and our direct action campaigns. Our strategic plan and calls for building momentum and slowly escalating our novel non-violent campaign to achieve planetary partnership and peace. 1,000 points of light Operating in silos will not, capitalize not, change the world. But those same points of light, once unified, contain the power to finally shift the paradigm. So let us gather our expertise, our life experience, and our cultural diversity and unify, in caps, unify. Let us also follow the path of truth, love, and light. Our shout out at Founding Mothers, truth, love, and light. And lastly, please, just get outside on a Wednesday morning or noontime Eastern and do the weekly worldwide wake up. Something in you will vibrate that and shake up somebody next to you, a neighbor, a dog, and somewhere you'll hear all of us come together. So every Wednesday at noon, we do this wake up call. And, you know, we mention it a lot in the growing up and the waking up and the keeping up. And so we need this weekly action until the Founding Mothers Proclamation is honored and women are free and war ends. So please also sign the Founding Mothers petition at theavis.org, and please, we put the link right in there, and don't forget to join us in this beautiful song that's coming up, The Prayer of the Mothers by Yal Deckelbaum. And please, as you'll see, the thousands of Palestinian and Israeli women have joined in a march for this video across the desert sands of the Middle East. So thank you for coming to our monthly Connect Fest. And thank you so much to help build the mother of all movements. And Cynthia, bless you. We will get everything produced and help you be able to spread your light and your film on this amazing woman. Thank you so much, everyone. Satnam.
רכישת רוח ים מנשבת מאי שם וכביסה מתנפנפת לצילי החומה بين الأرض والسماء ناس كتير بعيشوا سوا ما تخافوا تحلموا بالسلام والأمان متى يمسوا خمات הפחד ושבתי מגלותי ייפתחו שעריי אל הטוב האמיתי
would like to take this time to congratulate the women of Women Wish Peace. I want to thank you for standing up for peace alongside your Palestinian sisters. I want to thank you and to let you know that in the world that we live in, peace is possible only when women of integrity and faith stand up for the future of their children. Congratulations. It is my hope that you will continue to battle for peace in a constructive way, and I look forward to the day that I will come and join you. Thank you for the children of Israel. Thank you for the children of Palestine. Thank you. Peace. Shalom.
From the north to the south, from the west to the east, hear the prayer of the mothers. Bring them peace, bring them peace. From the north to the south, from the west to the east, salvation is ours. Bring the last, bring the from the north to the south, from the west to the east, salvation is ours. Bring the last, bring the from the north to the south, from the west to the east, salvation is ours. Bring the last, bring the hear the prayer of the mothers. Bring them peace, bring them peace. Bring them peace, bring them peace. Bring them peace, bring them
Thank you, everybody. We are going to stop the stream. And where is it? Live stream.